Hi, I'm Steve Cadigan, the author of Workquake, and someone who is completely obsessed about the future of work and building better talent strategies. On today's shows, I'm going to talk to you about how COVID has created the opportunity of a lifetime for us to build a better future of work. Why your attachment to tenure is really foolish. Why you should stop hiring just based on experience and focus more on talent. And why your alumni network matters more than ever and may be the greatest untapped network.
Welcome back to our delicious conversation with Steve Cadigan. He is an expert in the future of work and considered a corporate culture guru. He is the famous architect behind LinkedIn's amazing culture during their years of hyper growth. That's seen by many as the gold standard. His book is Workquake, Embracing the Aftershock of COVID-19 to Create a Better Model for Working. In the first part of the show, we dropped the mic at the end. Well, Steve dropped the mic at the end, really talking about how alumni are not the enemy. The people who used to work for you actually are one of the greatest possible resources you could have. If you have not heard part one, you just somehow found yourself at part two, go back, listen to part one, because it is profound. So let's get into part two of the show. We've covered a lot so far, but I want to go into one of the things that I know about leaders is, and I think it's done a lot by the social media world and the celebrity world, is that we see people as they are, and we don't really understand the backstory. We don't really understand that there is there's a journey. It's not, I went from here to there, right? So in our previous conversation, you told me about how there was a point in your career where you really floundered. You didn't have ambition. You lacked a plan. How did somebody with no plan, no specific ambition or aspirations find themselves really in the top job of their profession? How did you get to that? That's quite a journey.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I was in a dumpster.
You know, I'm not really sure I know the answer to that, Dove. I think I have some clues. And I like to share my story because I think so many parents of kids believe that they have to imbue a plan or roadmap on their kids. And I never had one. I went to school with no idea what I wanted to study. I graduated with not a clue of what I wanted to do. I knew what I didn't want to do was what my parents were doing. They're social workers and I love them and I love the work that they do, but I wanted to do something different in the world of business and I just didn't know what it was. And I didn't know what my super skills were, my powers were. So the first place I chose to work was a fashion company called Esprit in San Francisco. And they gave me...
I remember Esprit very well.
Yeah. They're bankrupt now in the US. They still exist outside of the US, but...
They were European and they were in Australia when I was in Australia for many years. They were a big name.
In the 80s, they were probably their peak years, did incredibly well. And their founders, Doug and Susie Tompkins, were great philanthropists, environmentalists, and they've bought up lots of rainforests in Chile, another story for another time. I rotated to different departments there and stumbled upon something that I thought was really interesting, and that was the world of recruiting. And I learned to love recruiting because things I knew outside of work that I loved were sports and everything about sports. Observing how people handle different competitive situations, who likes a crazy boss or a crazy coach, who handles stress well, who doesn't handle victory or defeat very well, and how the joy of assembling a group together to create something better. To me, it's the most beautiful art form in the world. I got lucky at age 22. I was like, hey, this is interesting. I was then hit by another struggle with, I never saw anyone above me in the world of HR that I respected or I wanted to be like. I'm like, I don't know that I want to do this because people sitting at the top don't have the lives or the values that I respect or want to aspire towards. And it wasn't until probably 6 or 7 years later that I ran into somebody at Advanced Micro Devices, Stan Winvik. I'm like, whoa, he's cool. He's really calling bullshit and he's really honest. And there's a way that I can do my craft and be real. That was so enlightening to me. And I was in my mid 30s, I think, Dove, when that happened. And I feel very grateful. And that's when I said, okay, I want to do this for the rest of my life. let's go to grad school. I went to school with a purpose for the first time in my life, got a master's degree. I don't think it did anything for me, but just made me more confident. And then along the way, I think what I found was really a power of mine, was a gift of being able to help people express themselves better than they were able to. I would listen to what they're saying. You mentioned something earlier, which is many times people come to you and say, this is my problem. And you find out later, that's not really your problem. It's a symptom of another problem. And trying to really unravel that. It's just, for me, it's a puzzle I love trying to solve.
Yeah.
And so, and that led me to, from one thing to another. In a way, I mean, this is a conversation about careers. I think careers are really just a laboratory of experiments. You just, from one to the next, you learn a little bit more what you're good at and what you love doing, and what environments inspire you to do your best work, and what kind of leadership styles work for you. And from one to the next, you get closer and closer to what that really is. And I got pretty lucky that, I found myself all of a sudden LinkedIn, and I had no idea that LinkedIn was going to be, no one did. On the executive team, we didn't think LinkedIn was going to be, but here I am, going to a pre-IPO company, the first time in my life working for a private firm, and being given an opportunity, which I never was given before, which is, here's soft clay, structured the way you want to, build the culture you want. Like, that was the first thing Reid Hoffman, the chairman founder of LinkedIn, said to me on day one. He said, hey, Steve, what kind of culture do you want? I go, what? No one ever asked me that. They always said, here's our culture, like, tune it, make everyone understand what it is. No one had ever asked me what kind of culture I want. I was like, whoa. And the answer came to me just like that. But that was really empowering. And so the fit of where I was on my journey at that point really fit for, okay, I've seen every mistake in the book. I've made every mistake in the book. Let me apply those in building something from scratch.
That's extraordinarily rare, where a founder of a company would say, what culture do you want to build? And I'm certain that there are many younger leaders sitting here going, geez, I'd love that opportunity, right? I work with people all the time who are saying to me, I don't know how to take a hold of the culture and shake it, because it's in restraints, and I don't get that power. What would, because we've talked a lot about tenure, and we've talked about influence and impact inside of an organization. But what if you like the company, you like the owners, you are a senior VP, you're not in the top yet, but you're on the way there, and you can see what needs to change, but you don't feel like they can listen. Let's imagine that person's talking to you. What's your guidance to them?
My guidance is, don't wait. Don't wait to ask for permission. Don't wait for the man to change. Don't wait for, someone to give you permission. You got to start acting. And if you really believe this is the right path and you have conviction, then start delivering and acting and behaving and hiring the people aligned with that. And if it has merit, if it's sticky, others are going to follow you. Right. And I think that's the big trap. And I've fallen into it many times in my career. It's like, wow, this company's never going to change. Yeah. With that attitude, it definitely won't,
Right.
So we have to companies are not one culture, especially when you get over 1,000. There are many microcultures that all fold under a larger culture. And at LinkedIn, we got comfortable with that. Like, hey, the team in India is going to be a little different than the team in China, than the team in Australia, than the team in North Carolina. It's just going to be different. And that nuance is okay, because we want people to be able to express the best of themselves to realize the greatest output. But here's a few things that we'd like considered, like, hey, relationships matter, and being honest and open and constructive with your engagements with other people. So I think that's okay. But I really encourage someone in that situation that you described, just start doing stuff that you think is right. I mean, and as you build followership and as you build faith and trust that your intentions are coming from a good place, I think you'll get advocacy and support.
So in your research into the future of work, what are you seeing successful careers and, for that matter, companies, what are you seeing those look like moving forward into the future? And how is that different in the context of the span of, like we talked about tenure, but also the span of how long a skill is going to last?
Right.
Because, we all know that people are leaving colleges and universities and with education that is out of date by the time they graduate.
Right. Right. I think you've answered the question almost in the way you framed it, Dove, which is which I'll reveal by answering it, which is the future of work. The more I get into it, is really the future of learning. As you said, the pace we have this enormous skill gap because the pace of technology is exceeding our capacity to train people how to apply it and deploy it. And we're never going to catch up with it. We created the technology, by the way. So we're never going to catch up. So you put layer on top of that the pandemic and the changing psychology of the workforce, and more pivots, more career changes, more resignations than ever, more new startups have been registered around the world than any time since we've been measuring it. What I'm seeing is organizations used to be able to fill a job with 80 to 90% of the skills that we're targeting. Now we're moving down to 50 or 60%. The supply of full qualified talent is diminished, and it's only going to continue. So what do I need to do? I need to become a talent development engine, not a talent recruiting engine. I'm going to have to learn how to grow it. And that means something really uncomfortable. I'm going to have to deprogram work. I'm going to have to recode how jobs are designed. So if there's a job that takes someone 5 years to learn and they leave after the 6th year, that's on me. I need to change that job so maybe 4 people can do it, and it takes me 3 months to upskill them and learn how to do it. You see what I'm saying? Absolutely. And so I'm building to expect more fluidity. If you're playing it, I was with the head of manufacturing in Atlanta a few months ago. What's your biggest problem? I got this machine, takes me 6 years for the person to learn it, and then they leave after 7 years. I'm like, dude, that's on you. You got to change that job. That machine can be run with a different configuration. The only challenge you have is your openness to creativity. And that, I think, is what, the big meta problem that I'm seeing in organizations today. Everyone says, I have a recruiting problem. My turnover's higher. The available talent in the market just diminished because of the pandemic. Everyone's switching their thinking. I said, you don't have a recruiting problem. You have a failure to be creative problem, because you think you can only create value with a full-time employee that you own. That's not true. You could create value with a whole host, an army of remote workers in contract roles, temp roles in different countries. You're just not comfortable doing it. So how long are you going to go? And so the answer I hear from a lot of executives is, I don't want to create a mercenary culture, a bunch of contractors in here, not, fully dedicated to me. And I said, really, mercenary culture, that's your worry? I said, how's your culture with all the people you have now doing 3 jobs because you can't fill your requisitions and you can't find the talent? How's that culture? And that's when they stop in their tracks and go, dang, I got to be more creative. And that's where we're at. We're going to have to learn how to grow talent, because the supply is going to be less. And by the way, all the jobs are changing fast. So isn't my competitive advantage the faster my team can learn and grow compared to my competitors? The more advantage I have over them, because I'm going to be able to pivot and take on new business and attack new markets with a team that can grow. I say that with confidence, Dove, because I was at LinkedIn. We're building a business that never existed before. And we were like, oh crap, 90% of our traffic comes from a Google search. Google knows that. Google could steer them to the Google hiring platform if they wanted to. We better build our moat really fast. We got to hire now or we're dead. And so that meant, hiring a bunch of people that had no business on paper doing certain jobs and being blown away time after time by people's energy when they're doing something they've never done before, overcompensating for the lack of experience. And so
that's a great point.
And so that gets me a little more comfortable because I've seen it and I built it. And we had people that, were from radically different on the paper experiences doing jobs they should have no business doing and killing it. I was an example of that. Going into LinkedIn, I've never managed more than 25 people on my team. I had 250 around the world. I should have had no business doing that. And we crushed it because I was hungry. I wanted to do something. I was not encumbered by what I should do or what I'm not supposed to do. Right.
Yeah. I think that when you come in with that mindset, you are also, like you said, people are wanting to overcompensate for not having an experience. But you're also wanting to prove something to them and to yourself. Many years ago, I was doing work, like I'm talking 30 years ago. I was doing work with a company, and they were a sales company, and they were having a hard time finding good salespeople. And I said, stop hiring salespeople. My best advice to you is stop hiring salespeople. And they go, well, we're in sales, Dov. Who the hell are we going to hire? And I said, go to coffee shops, go to bars, go to restaurants and hire servers. Hire servers as your salespeople. I don't know how, but they took my advice. They took my advice, they did it, and they blew it out of the water. And I'm like, how did you know? Because these people are trained to listen and then give you what you want, and also make recommendations that they're going to get paid an extra bit on when they make that extra. Isn't that sales? But it's sales through rapport as opposed to sales through pressure. And you've got a bunch of people who are doing sales through pressure, and they're doing sales through rapport. That's the major difference. And it worked great, but it was this understanding of exactly what you've just said, is that there are things that you've got. So I'll give you a quick example. I've been doing what I do for 37 years, but this is not my first career. My first career, surprise, surprise, was in hairdressing. I was a hairdresser, right? And so I started out in that. And when I left hairdressing, while I was doing all that and owned hair salons in 3 continents, while I was doing all that, I was studying psychology, I was studying metaphysical study, I was studying quantum physics, I was studying all the things because I'm a lunatic and I'm a polymath. I love to learn. But while I was doing that, I started to, in my last 2 years in the business, I started to study Jungian psychology. I wanted to be a Jungian therapist. I became a Jungian therapist. And I got a test, and in the test, so I'm doing my training, and about 5 months in, they brought in these people who give you your certifications and tell you where you're scoring. It was it was a 3-year training, and I'm 5 months in. And so they bring this person in, and he tests me, and he calls out to the owner of the organization and says, this is not funny. And I'm like, and the owner's like, what are you talking about? He goes, it's not funny. You've done this before, and it's not funny. And he goes, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, you put one of your trainers into my room for me to test, and then you want to pretend that, that this is a trainee. This person's obviously been a therapist for at least 5 years out of training. So the training plus 5 years. So don't, stop this. And he said, and he looks at me and he goes, and you could, he goes, you might think this is very funny, but it's not. And I said, I've been here 5 months. And he goes, bullshit. And I said, no, honestly, 5 months. And he couldn't believe me. But what had I learned? I was a hairdresser. I stood at people's backs and they had told me things they wouldn't tell their therapist. I had learned those skills. But if somebody had said, you're going to be great at negotiation, you're going to be great therapist, you're going to be great at listening to how companies are run and how to solve problems, while I was in the hairdressing business, somebody went, come on, I'm a hairdresser. But those skills are imbued. And I always say that learning is not lost if you reapply it. And oftentimes we don't. We go, well, it belongs in this box over here. And so much of what you're saying, Steve, that I just love is, what if we started looking at our employees that way? What if we said, because certainly millennials and definitely Gen Z, one of the things is that their highest priorities is to learn. So if you say, listen, how could you apply your knowledge from the previous position or 5 positions back? How could you apply that to marketing? How could you apply that to technology?
Right.
I mean, this is such a key point that you're making. The transfer of knowledge is so valuable, but we, the owners, the bosses, we're shoving people in boxes. They're not shoving themselves in.
Let me give you an example that illustrates your point. At one point at LinkedIn, we were at a phase, this is 2010. It became pretty clear that the cloud was going to be the future, right? And we needed people to program for the cloud. Well, the language at the time, it may still be used, but I'm far removed from it, is called Python language.
Yep.
And we said, we're going to need to hire a bunch of people with Python because we're going to need to be relevant in the cloud and take advantage of that and lower our costs, blah, 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 blah. So we're LinkedIn. So we know who knows how to do Python. We had 3 people in the company that knew how to do Python. And there were not enough people in the world that knew Python that we could hire. So we're like, okay, we're going to have to build a skill. So this is where things get really interesting. And this is a story, an example I use with a lot of clients. So what we did then is say, everyone that's doing Python now, what skills did they know before Python? What languages did they learn? Is there any clues in the DNA of Python programmers that could give us a hint of people that might have a propensity to learn this and do really well and enjoy it? Well, we found 15 people in the company, tapped them on the shoulder. You want to get someone excited, you tap on the shoulder and say, hey, we got this new language. It's the future of computing. It's cloud. It's called Python. We'd like to put you in a 6-month training program and you don't have to do your day job. Are you up for that? And they go, yeah, you're going to do that? Boom, we did it. And what you do with that 6-month training program, you just guarantee they're going to stay with you for at least 6 months. So that's good. And then they're going to tell their friends, they're going to tweet the crap out of it. They're going to status update it. They're going to tell other friends on Instagram. That's a moment we're going to, as I said earlier, we're going to need to rethink more creatively around building talent and value. We used to think it has to be an employee that I own. And this is another point that I think companies are really messed up. And this isn't me that said this, but a friend of mine, Bob Goodwin, I was talking about the future work. And he says, Steve, we don't do talent acquisition. We do experience acquisition. We only hire people with experience. We're not really hiring people for their talent. And I was like, oh, guilty as charged, Bob. That's so true. They're lower risk. Like you said, if I know that person has done it and they're proven, I'm not going to get in trouble from my boss because look, they're the person that's why people, who have the McKinsey or the Harvard or the Oxford, that's why they're hired, because they're lower risk. And we stop really getting like, do they have the grit? Do they have the hunger? Not always. If they have the pedigree, right? Everything's been served to them, and I think be very, very careful. But that example of the Python program is one I've carried with me ever since. It's been really helpful. And that's what we're going to have to do now, because we're not going to be able to find the supply that we want at the scale we were able to pre-pandemic.
What you just said there is really important about risk and hiring based on experience. And I know, because I've done it myself, but I know many others too, who were hungry enough to step into something and blow it out of the water, not because of anything other than I'm not going to fail at this. Right. Whereas, well, I know I've got a degree from, I used to work here and I've got this. So, okay, so we take you on, but now we kind of make excuses that you're a bit lazy because you've got a little bit of entitlement going on, because we said, well, he's a Harvard or she's a Harvard or, what, as opposed to saying, hold on, let's bring that guy in from the mail room. Oh, not that those exist anymore, but from the working floor and bring that person on and watch the level of hunger. So that level of hunger and that resilience is, that may be far more important moving forward. It'll be very interesting, Steve. I'm very interested to see what happens moving forward, whether the pedigree is going to remain, whether we are going to keep hiring through that because of safety while watching our companies go down, but say, well, we made all the right moves. We hired all the right people.
Right.
But did you?
Right. Here's a scary thought, which I love to provoke people's thinking around, which is in a world that is constantly digitally disrupted, where new technology is getting implemented all the time, where jobs are changing really quickly. It's not inconceivable that in the future, we're going to hire not based on what you know, but based on what you can know. And that is learning velocity, right? Don't you want an organization that can learn faster than your competition? Absolutely you do. But that's not how we recruit. We recruit based on what you did and what you know. And I think, and we always, I think intuitively, yeah, we want to know that you can learn and grow, but now it's really important that measuring that learning velocity, have you self-taught new things, or how fast did you learn that new skill? And we're going to need to really capture that. Think about that's really unsettling in a way that people are going to be interviewed more based on what they can learn than what they know. And I truly believe that that's going to be really important for us. And that the implications go deep into, as you said, like we're not seeing universities, it's not their fault, because universities are asking businesses, what should we build? The business is like, I don't know, soft skills. Universities are sort of victimized because businesses aren't really sure of the skills that they need for the future. But we're going to see people, I think, and this is, you see this in professional football, Manchester United, Man City, all they have schools for 6-year-old kids around the world. Yes. Why don't businesses start thinking about doing stuff like that? I mean, vertically integrate the whole learning thing. I think we're going to start to see, when the supply it continues to shrink, people doing experiments like that beyond just pro football.
I think that's a really great insight, that learning velocity may be the most valuable asset your company has. So if you are hiring based on experience and you're not built a learning velocity engine, you're dead in the water. That's really the future of work. That's brilliant, Steve. Mm-hmm. I cannot tell you how much I've really genuinely enjoyed this conversation, my friend. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. It's been deeply insightful, and I think might be a little awakening for a lot of people and shake their world. And that's good. We need that. We need that now more than ever. With the post-pandemic, with the great resignation, with the changing workforce, and I'm deeply grateful for you. Please share with our audience where they can find out more about you, where they can find the book and all of your resources, including TikTok. Tell people where they can find out more about you, because I know there's going to be leaders listening and going, TikTok? Are you kidding me? And this guy's killing it in TikTok, killing it. So go ahead.
Yeah. Easy to find me on LinkedIn. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I do accept invitations from people I haven't met. Just mention the show so I know that you heard me on Dove's amazing show. I've got a website, stevecadigan.com. You can find me on TikTok, Steve Cadigan. I'm telling you, it is not what you think. I thought it was going to be just all about lip syncing and dance moves. I don't have any, but there's a lot of really, I think, witty and funny content around the future of work that I'm trying to deliver, and lots of other people are too. So check it out, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. But Dove, thanks again so much for having me on this show.
My absolute pleasure, mate. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. It was a joy. And for you, dear listener, remember that we will, of course, have all of those connections, all of those places you can go find Steve's book, all the ways to connect with him on his own website, and the social media links will all be in the show notes. You can hang out with other conscious leaders, and you can chat about this episode that you've been listening to, or any of our past episodes inside of our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just look for the Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. It doesn't matter how successful you are. If your employees and your customers don't understand what gives your company meaning, you're only working at a fraction of your true capability. To find out how you can hire me, Dove Barron, as a speaker or leadership strategist for yourself or your organization, simply go to dovebaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. Because unified actualized meaning is the one single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for individuals and for companies. We want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about whether you are building an organization based on skills or on learning velocity. I'm Dove Barron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.